Hi, this is Paul Hitchcock. Thanks for jumping on Wealth Protector TV. You might be listening on Wealth Protector Radio. I'm here with Tom Santamorena, who is an insurance and risk expert. Tom, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you clearly.
Excellent, excellent. Well, listen, I want to jump into this because you're in a very hot industry with a lot going on, and I want to ask you, who are you working with in your business? Who's your client, and what are some of the hot issues that you're dealing with right now?
Well, the typical size account that I deal with are companies with 5 to 50 employees, 5 million to 50 million in revenue, all kinds of exposure, workers' comp exposure, property exposure, employment practice exposure, just all the different hot topics that are out there in the insurance industry.
Right, and are you finding that, I know workers' comp is a really big issue, and what are you focused on to help owners alleviate workers' comp claims? I'm hearing a lot about that, seeing that in different places. What's the focus there that kind of separates you in the process you employ?
Well, I try to educate these employers that workers' comp cost is a controllable expense. So we really need to embed that mindset with these folks, because they kind of look at it, well, it's just a big tax that I'm paying and there's no control over it.
Right.
Furthest from the truth. There is methods to control it and ways to drive down what we call your experience modification, which is how your premiums are calculated. And it just takes a kind of a safety-minded culture to implement at your company, and then some other steps that we could teach employers to do that's going to drive down the cost of insurance.
When you say safety-minded culture, what exactly does that mean? Can you drill down a bit on what owners can be doing in that regard?
Absolutely. Well, really, it's just to get everyone in the company, from the CEO to the newest person coming on board, to really put their safety hat on all the time. It's something that you don't have to do, but it's something that should be in the back of your mind. So I go and I'll help them set up a safety committee in the company where we'll meet monthly. And we'll have people from different departments come in and just talk about what training they've given, what accidents that they have, what existing claims are out there. Conduct loss control inspections every month and have that reported. And kind of just get people into the mindset of thinking safety, security first, and ways to improve it all the time, every day.
It's amazing. It's amazing to think that companies aren't doing that, but you still run into scenarios you come across where companies don't have those best practices going on?
Unfortunately, it's a majority of people out there who just think workers' comp is a commodity. You buy a policy and that's what it's all about. And they can't see that they do have a lot of control over the cost.
Huh. And when you're going in there with your team, what is, when someone's coming on board, is what I wanted to focus on, is potential new client for you, and maybe you see that they've been doing it one way for so long. What does the process look like, the onboarding process, where you're trying to discover how you can help them, if you can help them? What does that look like for you?
Well, the first thing I like to do is just take a look at their current loss runs for the past few years to see where their losses are, see if there's any trend there, to see if it's a particular employee, a particular department, a particular type of injury, and just kind of start by looking at that and see if there are some solutions to address those trends. And that's really the first thing I want to do, is just take a look at your loss history.
Right. And then from there, is it a complimentary assessment you're doing initially of their risk exposure, which then gets into potential solutions and opportunities they might not be looking at?
Absolutely. I mean, there's probably about 7 or 8 techniques that are time proven to run down your costs of claims, and just try to educate them on that, implement it with them, and help them manage it.
Is the environment for liability getting worse, in your opinion, for small business, in America? I mean, what is going on there where you say your services are becoming more and more valuable? Do you see that getting worse, to staying the same? What's happening?
Well, I do see it getting worse. The more litigious society that we live in, the more exposures that crop up and issues that arise, there tends to be a lot of what we would call frivolous lawsuits.
Oh, yeah.
However, without the insurance, you need it, even if you didn't do anything wrong, just for the defense costs, because defense costs could be very expensive as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I'm at an asset protection law firm, and really,
Yes.
in a sense, you and I are both in the asset protection business.
That's right.
Yeah, and you say lawsuits. There's 40 million lawsuits filed in the United States every year, only getting worse. And we're always telling our business owner clients that, look, insurance is your best first line of defense. You've got to have it. And we see people get nailed all the time because they don't have the proper insurance in place. They weren't focused on kind of the exclusions and things that, holes. And so it goes, they get nailed. Even though they have insurance, it's like, hey, you didn't pay attention to it. You screwed it up. So you and I, we're working hand in hand. Would you say that's a fair way to assess it?
Oh, absolutely. And insurance evolves over time. Previously, if you had a workers' comp and a general liability and a property policy, you were good. Now
Right.
there's so many new exposures out there: employment practices, cyber liability, your professional liability. The new one is their active shooter insurance. Shuts down businesses. So there's liability all over the place.
Is the active shooter thing? Is that a new kind of focus?
That is the newest trend. I got up until now probably cyber liability was one, but now you have active shooter where businesses are shut down, loss of income. They might not have a direct loss, but they're going to have the loss of business because the police are shutting it down. They're doing their investigations, and it costs businesses money, and that's not been included in other liability coverages.
Unbelievable. It's horrible that we even have to think about that.
It is.
Yeah, it's too bad. What about when it comes to wage and hour issues and things like that? Does that fall under your purview?
Yeah, that would be contained in the employment practices liability insurance, and a lot of coverage rules out wage and hour. So you really have to be very careful and selective when you do shop for what we call the EPLI insurance.
So that's a huge one because we see a lot of the wage and hour issues at our firm, and it seems like such a gray area. People are just going for it. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so that's something where you would pay particular attention to that issue and make sure that the risk is crafted appropriately, of course.
Exactly, because as I mentioned, a lot of the EPLI policies do not provide wage and hour coverage. It's excluded, especially in California. There's a lot of issues with that, so a lot of companies have excluded it, so you really have to seek out the right coverage and company.
Yeah. Are you guys dealing with rental property owners at all?
Quite a bit. That's one of my big practices is, commercial buildings.
Okay. And so this new bill that Governor Gavin Newsom here in California is about to sign with rent control across the state, is it something that you're having to pay attention to?
Well, many of my customers are very concerned about it because it goes against the supply and demand, and it's not going to really be helpful for everyone.
Yeah, big deal. Tom, always great information to find out what you're focused on. Really appreciate you having you on the show here, and I'd like to have you back and in the future.
Sounds great. I would look forward to it.
All right, Tom. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Paul.